and I know she's feeling under the weather, and I wish her nothing but health, and I hope she comes back to us soon. We miss her dearly. But I have my partners in crime, Chris the Critcher Zissy. What's up, Chris? How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Had a wonderful day. Did one of those all-you-can-eat buffets. So if I start nodding off, you'll know why. That's why I have a Rockstar energy drink, and I am doing so good. I do miss Muse. The estrogen factor is no longer here, and I look forward to getting that back.
That's a lot of sugar, bud. You know, those rock stars.
Yeah.
You better be careful. You know, you're wild enough on the show as it is. So just tone it down a notch. We need you to act dead like Dexter over here and HorrO from Promote Horror. How are you guys doing tonight?
Oh, I'm certainly dead after my adventure, and Dexter is always dead. So yeah, we're doing on the right side of history here.
So I know you had a big week, man. What you were out and about and seeing some horror sites. Tell us just a quick minute about it, man. Unless you want to, do it for another show, you can give us the
Yeah.
shindig.
Once Muse comes back and we get into our regular shindig, I'll go into it in a little bit more detail. But just to kind of tease everybody out there, I went to Halloween Horror Nights here in Orlando, and in my opinion, not that I've been to a ton of them, but the best attraction and must see attraction for a horror fan at some point in their life. Um, it was the first time kind of came out of the coronavirus shell I've been in. So that was another thing. So it was horror on top of other horror, and so far so good. I'm here and not looking like the man behind me.
Well, that's cool, man. I love the pictures that you sent. I took a little trip out to Vegas, and it was a horror show in itself. Yeah, I just realized that I don't like people that much, man. I'm glad that you guys are in a screen in a little box, because I like you better that way. But no, Vegas is just so many people, and they're right on top of each other. And I'm not scared of the virus. I'll be honest with you, but I still just don't want to be around people. Period. And I gambled a little bit, and I won money. And then I tried to win more, and I lost the money that I'd won. And I had a really good time. I got to see my family. My lady was with me. It was amazing. The weather was beautiful, and yeah, I just a lot of fun. Um, all right, so I want to talk a little bit about the show we're going to get into here. It's a really interesting movie that we have lined up for you. It's called Frank and Zed, directed by Jesse Blanchard, who will be with us in 1 second here. But before we get into it, normally the way we run our show, we do a quick review or whatnot. We have Chris have a quick segment, but since Muse is not with us, we're going to kind of change it up a little bit. And Chris is actually going to do his review with Jesse on the mic here, and we'll introduce him in a second. But Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's hear a quick review.
This is kind of neat. You want a movie that's a little different. That this is going to be it. Look no further than Frank and Zed. You classic horror movie fans, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein. A lot of this is going to look familiar to you. And stay after the end credits, and you'll see why. But this is kind of a neat movie because my kids are 25 and 22, and it's been several years. And Jesse, you could probably relate better, but you ever get stuck watching Elmo and Sesame Street, and after the 55th time, you just want Elmo's guts ripped out and compound fractures? Well, this is a movie for you, Frank and Zed. Um, I'm hesitant to say it's a puppet show because, I mean, it kind of is. But it is more than that. It is a gore fest puppet show. There's a little bit of the Japanese Asian influence. There's spurting. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. It's an opera. It's a fairy tale. It's a very simple story with very pronounced, exaggerated characters doing very pronounced and exaggerated things. And when you talk about the undead doing pronounced and exaggerating things, you get the compound fractures, you get the spurting blood, you get the bowels ripped out, and then throw in some spiders, throw in some rats, throw in some squirrels. You don't see squirrels in many movies. I think Antrim was the last movie we had with squirrels in it. Well, we got another one. These squirrels won't fare nearly as well. We got axes, we got beheadings. But I'm almost tempted to say bring the kids in because it's a plot that the kids can get behind. I'm demented. I used to let my kids watch stuff like this, and I got yelled at a lot because of it. So I'll leave that to your wives to decide if the kids see it. But it's the classic fairy tale plot. This old town makes a bargain with the devil, basically, to get rid of a present evil. The problem is the payment is going to come in the future. And here we are in the future, and something still exists where an ominous force was going to besiege the town. And this ominous force is Frank and Zed. And a little more than that, but think Frankenstein and think zombie. And I got the puppet contingent here today. I don't know if you can see that. But this puppet, however brilliant that is, these puppets that I hate to call them puppets because they're not. I mean, they're like amazing. And stay to the after the end credits because you're going to see exactly how they did it and who these people are and the magic behind these special effects. But it's the old castle. It's the I can tell, and I'm going to ask this later, but there's definitely a Frankenstein Bride of Frankenstein influence in the sets, and the sets are just amazing. But a town has got to come to grips with a pact that they made years and years and years ago, and there's a curse. And of course, what is going to happen is the evil within this evil castle is going to have to come to a climactic meeting with the townspeople who are dropping dead like flies. And the bloodbath that will ensue, I won't give any spoilers, but you're going to love Frank and you're going to love Zed, but you're going to also be reminded they're not human. They're not like us. They have no sentimentality for the human condition, human life. They're into self-preservation because that's what their life has been as they've been forced to live. These two who have become great friends and friendship, they understand, but anything coming from the outside is not only an annoyance, but a threat to them, and they will defend what they have. They're not evil. They're just like us, but they're different from us. And when the two sides come together, just like today, just like society, just like every war we had, it's not going to be pretty. But there's a lot of good themes, a lot of classic themes. There's going to be a lot of compound fractures. There's going to be a lot of spurting blood. But the pounding score, the Shakespearean tragedy, comedy is there. The almost you could see this as an opera. But it's a fairy tale setting, and if it wasn't for the spurting blood, which I don't mind, but my guess is your wives will say no to the kids watching it. This is going to be the movie that you need to see this Halloween season when you say, I got all these movies. I just want something different today, something different. Frank and Zed is going to be your best bet on that. You're going to be amazed. And like I said, Jesse does a great job. And stay for the end credits because I was fascinated by what was going on, how these people were making these puppets do what they did, the way they were filmed, the sets, the guy who did the sets, the castle's only like this big, but it's this ominous thing in the distance. It's like the scene from Stuntman when Peter O'Toole keeps reminding Steve Railsback King Kong was only 3 feet 6 inches tall. So movie magic at its best. This is the I want something a little different movie of the holiday season. Great job, Jesse.
Oh, thank you.
That note, Jesse, welcome to the show. Congratulations on the movie. I'm not gonna lie. So HorrO said, he sends us movies between us two. We always send movies what we're gonna do for the week. I had no idea what I was turning on. And I turned on the movie. I'm like, what's going on here? There's puppets. I was like, holy shit, there's blood and puppets. And there's zombies. And there's a Frankenstein. And there's heads cutting off. And I was just like enamored by it. I loved it. I thought the concept was amazing. I thought it was really dark at times. It was funny at times. I'm an artist myself. I appreciated just what went into this film. I can't wait to get into that portion of it to hear what all the stuff that was behind the scenes. But Jesse, how's it going, man? Congratulations. Tell us about yourself and what's going on with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's going well. Frank and Zed is finally getting out into the world, which is really exciting. And now it's kind of like, okay, what are, I'm kind of in, what's going to happen with the film and where do we go next? But it's been really exciting because we've worked on this film for, 6 or 7 years, kind of depending on how you count and where you start. And so actually getting it in front of people has just been really exhilarating. It's super exciting.
Well, I understand, that you're the director, writer, you produced it, and you had your hands all over this. Where did the idea of Frank and Zed come from? I mean, obviously there's what Chris mentioned, you got like a Frankenstein theme type going on, and a zombie type thing. But where did the idea of these two awesome characters come from?
I know when it happened. It's hard to say like how it happened. What was kind of strange is I was actually swimming laps, which I don't do particularly often, but I was like swimming when I got the idea. And so I wasn't near a pen and paper, I was just like swimming. And I think maybe because I was kind of trapped in the pool, I was just kind of going through the idea. And by the time I got out of the pool, I had quite a bit of it in my head. I was like, all right, there's going to be a zombie and a Frankenstein, and they depend on each other to survive. And I knew that the zombie hooked the Frankenstein up and that the Frankenstein got brains. And then I also knew the other image I had really clearly was that the zombie would kind of chew, that the Frankenstein had the glass dome and that the zombie would chew on top of the brain every night, like a dog chewing on a bone is how I imagined it. And a lot of that just kind of came in that one kind of initial brainstorm as I was just playing around with these guys.
I've seen like stop motion in real life. I've got to see a couple sets and stuff, and I feel like some of these movies, just one of my favorite of all time, and I'm sure a lot of people listen to the show, is Nightmare Before Christmas, the Tim Burton films, Corpse Bride, Box Trolls was another great one. I don't know if everybody's seen that. There's so many new films that are coming out, and as I've seen some of these movies made, each scene or each still is taken into account, and you have to go and pose and whatnot. I wanted to ask you, is it harder to make a film like this rather than using, the traditional real people, and you're directing real people and whatnot? Is it harder?
It's trade-offs. I mean, there's certain things that are much easier. Like if you want to rip somebody's arm off, you just rip it off, right? Like you can just do those kinds of things. However, getting them to stand up, like they don't stand on their own. They don't have legs. One of the most challenging things to do with the puppets is getting them to look at each other. So like if you have a conversation with somebody, if that person is just looking at your nose, just a little bit below your eyes, it looks weird. Like it throws everything off. So that's one of the trade-offs she makes with puppets, is getting them to look at each other is really challenging. So there's trade-offs for everything. But at the same time, like when it works with the puppets, when it feels real, when you actually bring them to life, the payoff is just like amazing. Hold on 1 second. My dog really wants out. Give me 1 second.
No problem, man. You can bring the dog on the show. It's fine.
All right. He'll come say hi.
we always have these animals that come in. Remember the lady with the cat? Or that was it, a guy? I don't know. But
I remember the squid. Yeah.
There
we go. All right, Cody. All right. You want to say
Cody's
hi? Buddy?
Here. Oh, look at Cody.
There's
Cody's
Cody.
There. He's happy.
There's Cody. He's very excited. Hey, buddy. All right. Oh, I'm going to get some kisses.
Well, Jesse, the art design was just amazing. The concept of these characters are so detailed. The zombie, you can see part of his brain, his skull. Frankenstein's got like this extra part of his foot to make him a little even, and just little details like that. How involved were you in the final design of these?
Really heavily involved. So I, like for instance, with Frank's foot, that was something that I had the idea for, and I made his boot. Actually me and my mom made the boot, but I cut the tree down and hammered all the nails through the foot, right into the log. And then for the actual, for the sculpt and the paint of Frank and Zed, that was done by a really phenomenal artist. His name's Aaron DeBray. And he And so with him, I'd work together and say things like for Zed, for all the designs, I said, like, I want us to be uncomfortable. I want the design to push so far that we're afraid to use it, that it makes us uncomfortable. And so a great example of that is with Zed. I was like, I want the teeth so big that, like, make the teeth so big that I'm like, no, that they're too big. And so Aaron did. And the teeth are almost half of Zed's face. They're so big. And I was uncomfortable, and I was like, great, you did it. You made them so big, I'm uncomfortable. You know, and the same thing with like Frank. It was like, I want him like so gross, but endearing. How gross can we make him and yet you still like him? So like, if you look at the side of Frank's neck, it's got like cellulite from some flabby, I mean, it's so disgusting. And so that's kind of how I worked, you know, specifically with Aaron, like on Frank and Zed, is really saying like, hey, let's, you know, we're not making any money, we're not getting paid. So what we can do is we can do whatever we want. And since we can do whatever we want, you know, my mandate, I said, we have to find, like, I want to find the edges. How far can we push everything to find where too far is? And my hunch was there's no such thing. So that was kind of how I was involved.
My final question is more of just a appreciation of the movie. The music. I loved the background music to this. It was very haunting, you know, and it kind of played its own role. I always like to just shout out the composers that are a part of this. Did you have a play in that, or how did that work out?
So the composer is a guy by the name of Michael Richard Plowman, who is just phenomenal. I mean, the music in Frank and Zed is so good, and it's doing so much work. And Michael really helped. I mean, he could totally change the feeling of the scene and the mood of the scene, and really change like a lot of the beats and things like that. And we worked together for almost 6 months on the music, and did, you know, and certain songs like the sewing scene music, you know, I think we did 7 different songs for that sewing scene to like get it right. So he really, I was very heavily involved, but at the same time, he did 99% of the work. Because the other thing too is, you know, like Frank and Zed don't talk. And so the music really tells so much of their story. It really underscores what's happening, and also really helps to orient the viewer. Because a lot of the traditional shots, you know, we can't really do, like establishing shots and wide shots and things like that. There's a lot that I really had to lean on the music to do those things. Yeah, so the music is just, yeah, that's all Michael Richard Plowman. And it's just like total. I mean, I had the whole film temped with really good music that I absolutely loved, and he just made it a world better. And there's really cool things like the opening with Frank and Zed is all in 5/4. So it's like one. So traditional music is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's all our Western music, right? In 5/4, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm nerding out here, but it's off kilter. It doesn't, you know, it's hard to get used to. And so you have this like really engaging, like poppy kind of music when you see Frank and Zed, and it's in a rhythm that doesn't feel right to us. Things like that are just so good.
Well, like I said, I think it played its own role, and but that's the last of my questions. I'm going to pass you on over to HorrO, and he can ask his questions. Chris, since you got to do the review first, you got to back clean up.
I might get all the way again. 1 second.
No problem.
Go ahead.
Hi, my love. What do you need?
No worries. No worries. We're gonna have to take a timeout. Going live. This is what happens with going live.
Yeah, I have a song I could sing.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, remember
solo meow. Yeah,
I bought this poster.
Sing it.
I do. Oh,
yeah, right. Oh my goodness, he has a puppet.
I do.
See, I blame Muse for this. You know, for the
puppet.
shenanigans.
Hello, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How are you today? I just ate a mouse. Oh, that's good. Go away now. Okay.
See, this is the rock star talk, not criticism. I'm not saying the proverbial Chris. This is like the
Corrupted
actual
by
drink
the
of rock star.
caffeine.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Jesse, we're back with Jesse here. Omar, go ahead and take over.
All right, no problem. We're all having fun. No worries, Jesse. You gotta do what you gotta do.
There's people like my dog and my kid who just don't care about my puppet movie.
We don't care about Frank. We don't care about Zed.
That's not important. I want my belly rubbed and my show changed, Dad. That's the important stuff.
Pretty much. I want Peppa. I want Blue's Clues. I want everything.
Yep.
All right. So I kind of want to start with your pre. You got a little short before the actual film starts. Kind of tell us why that was important and how fun that was. Because when it started, I'm like, what is this? And then all of a sudden, hey, we get introduced to that blood and guts. We're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, well, that little short shine is actually really important to me because, about 10 years ago was when I was really frustrated. The films that I was working on, they always kind of fell apart at the last second. I didn't have enough money. I couldn't get the actors I wanted, et cetera. And so I was like, you know what, let's just try puppets. And that was like pure necessity. It was just like, here's a way to get it done. And I had this big monster movie I'd written that I was going to try with puppets. And I was like, all right, first let's do a short film. Let's just see how it goes before I jump into a feature. And so I wrote this little barbershop horror short called Shine. And I just went on Craigslist to put an ad on Craigslist for a puppeteer. And that's how I connected with Jason Ropp. And we did Shine in about 2 months. And it was super fun. It was so much fun. And that's really kind of where I got the bug to do kind of the puppet stuff. And so it's in there for a lot of reasons. Like, one, it was just fun to say hey, here's where we started. This is how it started. Kind of this is how it's going as we move to Frank and Zed. And it was also something we did exactly 10 years ago. And then also I also thought it's a great way to set up the film because that is kind of puppet core. It's this kind of blood, guts, and a little bit of comedy. And I also thought for some of the sharp viewers, when you get to the orgy of blood, the quartet's all in the same order, of course, and they get the same injuries as they get in Shine, in the same order, etc. So it was also just kind of a fun little Easter eggy type thing. So because I wanted to is another answer.
Never failed. That one doesn't fail.
Yeah.
So continuing to talk about kind of the beginning, I guess you also did a fun thing, which I got to see, and I know a lot of people on Instagram got to see, where you did kind of like a prequel setup there. And what was amazing about that is you went from one account to another to another. I'm not sure how many Frank and Zed fans caught that, but can you kind of explain that to people and where they might be able to find that?
Yeah, so we did, so I have a series of prequels for Frank and Zed that I want to tell in different media. And so, yeah, as a fun experiment, I had a story that was done in 10 different chapters and then as chapters of a diary. And then what we did is there's 10 different really phenomenal artists, and each of them published one chapter with some original art from that chapter and then linked to the next artist. And it was a really fun experiment. But it's one of those things where I really underestimated how innovative it was for Instagram. And I was like, oh man, next time I do something like this, I really got to shout out exactly what's happening. But it was still really fun. And also some of the people that did get it, I think to really have that kind of joy of discovery. But yeah, so something I might kind of consolidate them all and make it a little bit more accessible, but I can send the link or we can put it up somewhere to the first one, and then people can hunt through and then hopefully find all the entries to learn this prequel of one of the people that ended up donating or sacrificing their body to become Frank.
Yeah. Certainly, Instagram is good for things and then not so good for things, and it works for some stuff. But I was just amazed at how many different artists and how many different. I thought I was going to go into one account and just see it, and then it was just amazing to bounce around and see everybody contribute. I thought that was really, really different and cool.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your experience. So you enjoyed it?
I did, and like I said, it was something different. I just didn't expect. I thought I was just going to go on one thing and go down, and it was kind of cool to see different people and see, not see the reactions under that and under different accounts and so forth. Admittedly, it was a touch hard to follow because of that, but I thought it also made it interesting and different, something different to Instagram because I don't want to go into the whole Instagram spill, but yeah, it's tough. Instagram is good for things and hard for other things. But myself, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
With that kind of, you touched a little bit on it. I know you obviously now you have this Frank and Zed universe. You have a lot of prequels. Is that kind of where you're kind of leaning, maybe going from the future, or is there something you have a universe where there's after, or you just don't know where you're going?
Yeah, I mean, I think Puppet Core is. I've thought about it a lot, and I think Puppet Core is going to be kind of my view of the world, and I think that view will stay very similar to Frank and Zed. The script that I'm working on right now will have just one massive puppet, and it's about this giant monster that has been a sideshow attraction in Southern Oregon, and it's set like in present day, and nobody cares about it, and it's just kind of slowly dying, So that's like the script I'm working on now. There's lots of stories that are like would be in kind of the Frank and Zed verse or whatever you would want to call it that I would love to tell. Like I really want to explore some like werewolves and other kind of. I would also love to invent some sort of monster because I feel like we've kind of seen like the classic ones like so many times. It would be really interesting to see something that is tied to a spider or other maybe kind of folklore or something like that. So some of it's opportunistic. And just if the right opportunity comes around and somebody wants to see some more Frank and Zed, I would love to do that. So it's kind of a long way of saying like I'm chasing a bunch of stories and we'll kind of see what happens. But I think in the short term, I want to tell these 5 different prequels, different stories so we can learn more about Frank and kind of his origin. And doing so with the puppets just takes too long. So that's why I was like, I actually have another one written as a comic book, and it's just a matter of funding the artist. Like it's all written out, all the panels and stuff, it's ready to go. But doing that's a couple $1,000. So kind of digging that up, it's much easier than the movie, but it's still a matter of going like, okay, well, how are we going to swing this? How do we bring this to life? Because I'm not going to sell a couple $1,000 worth of one comic book like that. That's pretty unlikely at this point, So, but I also want to do it. There's another one I really want to do as a radio play. So all voice acting and Foley. And so it's going to be really cool. It's about this priest who hears there's this dripping water and it slowly drives him crazy. And Sam Mowry, who's the narrator in Frank and Zed, is part of a radio like club that does these like old timey radio plays. So I want to do one in that kind of style, which I think would just be like really fun.
You along the way as we've talked to you, you've mentioned a couple of people here or there that have contributed. How easy or hard was it to find some of these people? Because I'm sure you put out a call for actors, and you can probably get thousands of actors, and if you need an assistant or whatever, you can get those people. But for people to do puppets and voice and whatever, was that a little harder to do, or did you just kind of one person to another and connection, and then it was all okay?
It's both. Phenomenal people are like really hard to find, and they also just show up. So it's kind of weirdly both. Like I was so worried about the music. Like Ken talked about the music. I was like, if the music is bad, like there's no faking it, right? Like other than maybe I can throw some sauce, but if the music's bad, and then managed to connect with like Michael Richard Plowman, Same thing with like, so I don't, I'm a big believer in kind of the most powerful tool you have is your brain. And if you tell your brain, like, I need this, I need to find this person, I need to find this thing, and you start turning that brain on, stuff happens, and you send out 100 emails and the right people. I mean, part of what's great is that because there's so few resources for the project, it was a great filter, because I was like, somebody who's just in it for the money is not going to work. Only people who really love the idea and are dying to do the film are going to put in the time. And that's, you need that kind of or if you have that passion, the work is that much better. So, but that's also a big part of why it took so long, because it's always like, good, fast, cheap, pick two. And it was like, all right, we want it really good and really cheap. So it's going to take a long time. And so that was part of the play, saying like, okay, how do we give the artists, and that's also ultimately my job. Is I always say, like, I work for everyone on the crew, they don't work for me. Like, how do I support them? How do I give them the best assets, the best information, so they can do really good work? But yeah, it's hard, but like for the Instagram piece, I was thrilled with the artists that came on board. I mean, they're just phenomenal artists, but I talked to a lot to find the right fit. And some people are like, didn't like Frank and Zed. And it's like, okay, no problem. You're not a good fit. that's cool. And you don't owe me and my puppet film anything. So peace be with you. And maybe in the future, but yeah, but anyway, yeah. So it's like super critical. And also like, it just works out. I mean, that's one of the things I figured out with Frank and Zed. Like, it works out. Like, you just jump and the net appears. You just jump. You don't wait until you're ready. You go before you're ready, and just trust that something will happen, So like, for instance, on the Instagram piece, there's 10 different artists, and one of them at the last second couldn't do it. And I found someone else who was great, and I can't imagine it without them. So it's kind of like, and that messed up timing and deployment, and part that really changed aspects of the project, but also the finished art was like so cool. So, it's just, yeah, I don't know. That's a long-winded answer to your question. I don't know if that actually answers anything.
No, that is fine. I think when you find, and especially with horror, you find the right people, and right people who are in love with horror and what they do and how they contributed to it. I think, like you said, it kind of finds itself, and it will all work out. In the end, of course, you're not going to please everybody, and not everybody can be worked with, but I think it will work out for the most part in the end. My final question before I throw it to Chris, because I'm sure he's going to ask you about the blood and guts and all that good fun stuff. I'm kind of curious, as far as the puppets are concerned, at least the major ones, or maybe even all of them, did you have just one puppet for each character, or were there multiple puppets because you had to do a lot of killing them off?
Yeah, the plan was to have multiples. Like, I was even going to have miniatures of Frank and Zed and stuff like that. And that was always the plan, but it takes way too long. It just takes way too much time. I mean, it took a year to make Frank and Zed. And then the soft puppets, the felt puppets, we can make those much faster, but it's impossible. They're all made by hand, so they don't look right. It's like if me or you draw Homer and we trace it, and it's like, you can tell it's Homer, but it's not. Right? It's just a little fuzzy and kind of weird, and the eyes are just like, so we could only had one of every puppet. And it was funny because there's, especially when we got to the battle, I was always like, when a puppet dies, it has to die in a way that there's no putting it back together. And that meant like no reshoots. And a lot of the film had to be shot out of order. So it was a really scary for me to be like, okay, I hope I have everything, because it's all just written on paper. All the storyboards just done on paper. Be like, I have to have every shot with his character, because we're going to kill him completely dead, destroy him, rip him apart. And then some of the crew would be worried about it, be like, no, you can't kill him. And then some of my other key people loved it, because that meant we're not shooting that guy anymore. So they would actually be like, that part's done. We can't do it again. We got to, so it was, anyways. But yeah.
it must be tough if you fall in love with a puppet and then you just have to, off with his head.
It is, but I remember telling one of my guys, because he made that case, and I was like, yeah, but this is what the character deserves. This is how you do justice to the character and the audience, and the place they're really going to live is in this film. So we have to give the audience their whole journey. And I really believe that. And yes, that means they're sacrificed. They're gone, and that's the promise I feel like I make to the audience, and I want to keep it.
Absolutely. Easier puppets than people. So with that, I thank you for your time and answering my questions. And I'm going to let Chris wrap it up.
Hey, Jesse, just before you got on, Ken was telling us how much he hates people. I actually love people. But, and then you come on. And I remember the movie Tourist Trap when the guy turns Tanya Roberts and all her friends into puppets at the end of the movie and drives away with a big smile on his face. I don't know if that's relevant, but one of the things I was thinking of is, let's go back 30 years, let's go back 40 years, let's go back 50 years when you were a wee little kid. Were you watching MST3K and watching the robots move? Were you watching Creature Feature and see Ghidorah with the 3 heads? Because you think back, and we were watching puppets back then. Godzilla, I think, was a suit, but Rodan and Ghidorah, they were puppets. Did these movies, or did the little robots and the MST3K have any influence on you when you were little?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even Jurassic Park has a lot of puppets in it.
Yeah.
Like puppets is and yeah, I always love that stuff. It's so fun. I mean, it's one of the reasons you get into movies. And absolutely, like making Frank and Zed, it's like, it's a lot of work, but it's also, you get to do it. It's like, it's really fun. And it is, and I think making movies, like many things, it's that duality of like, it's so fun to do it, and it's really hard, and you love it one minute and you hate it the next. You have like, I think with any massive endeavor, you have that. Like the bigger the project, the harder the thing you're doing, you have those big cycles. And that's absolutely what we had with Frank and Zed.
I used to teach that 80% of communication is nonverbal. Here with Frank and Zed, it's got to be about 99. I think there's some grunts and squeals. But you talk about the fights, the battles, people running up the stairs, people falling down. But to get 2 characters, you got to remind us that these guys didn't talk, because when you think back, there was a lot of communication going on. There's friendship, there's fear, there's heartbreak, there's routine, there's conflict, just with Frank and Zed. And regardless of the action, the facial features alone must have been burdensome enough, even without the other stuff, to get Frank and Zed as pillars of communication, and early on getting the audience to know who these 2 people were, where they came from. And once the audience knows them, then they can sort of fill in the blanks. You had to do that early on. I can't imagine just even the face, never mind the whole puppet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you talk about that, because it's really, I always say, like, people are going to come to the movie for the orgy of blood, and then we hopefully sucker punch them with a good story. Yeah. And Frank and Zed, like, their story was the thing I was most passionate about, and I was super excited to do it like as earnestly as possible, as real as possible. It's never a joke; they're puppets, and that was absolutely, and it was also one of the biggest challenges, because for instance, it opens with this: their lives are really mundane. You're like, okay, how do you show boredom without being boring, right? that was like really tricky. Like, how much repetition do you show to show that this has been their lives? And but I'm glad you had that reaction, because that was absolutely, that's like the heart of the movie. I'm like, that's what hopefully makes it like actually kind of worth the 90 minutes that you're spending. And it was really challenging to say, like, how do we do this without with so little, like, how do we express so much so efficiently was a big challenge.
Yeah. Ken almost stole this question. He got into it. He never does that, by the way. But I'd be remiss, and my family would be mad at me. I come from a family of musicians and actresses, and I'm not, but they are. So I haven't been to a lot of musicals, a lot of classic musicals. I see in this a musical theater background from maybe somebody who made the movie. Certainly, there's a knowledge of the opera. I mean, you're not just one of those guys we interview. It says, I loved horror growing up. I want to make a horror movie. Uh, I'm guessing that there's a lot of knowledge in you about the theater, a lot of background, a lot of interest, especially maybe even music theater, though this isn't per se a musical. You could see it as a musical. Yeah.
It's really fascinating you say that. I mean, you're dead on the money. Yeah, I was raised doing like a lot of musical theater. My mom is a costumer from the theater, and I actually came to horror like really late in life. And so I think you're absolutely seeing a lot of that kind of, like with the Baker in the Woods and all that other stuff. It's very hammy, right, over the top kind of theater stuff. So yeah, you're totally on.
I very excited about this movie because it is that movie, like I began the show with. If you just want something a little different tonight, if for some reason you like the other stuff, you just want something a little different, and that's it. I would have been satisfied with just your classic slasher movie with the final girl and with nubile sorority sisters as victims. That would have pleased me. But you obviously you're not going to settle for that. You've got a story to tell. You've got a booming story to tell. You have almost a Greek tragedy. You've got a classic universal set, and you didn't just say, let's start small and do maybe a demented Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. You pulled everything in. Is this like I'm just going for the stars, I don't care?
Yeah, I mean, I always said, like, we're doing our best to rip off Lord of the Rings. Like, that's what we're doing. Like, there's no... So even when I wrote it, for instance, like when I wrote it, it's like there's this big forest in the middle. Like, how are we going to do a forest? I don't know. We're going to build a forest like in this tiny space. And it's like, and then again, it was always, but yeah, that was absolutely the goal, was to say, like, I don't care what our limitations are. Like, we're going to pretend like we don't have any. How can we overcome all of those? How can we show a castle that doesn't look like every other castle you've seen? I mean, how many castles have you seen? We've got zombies. Like, what can you do that's new with a zombie that hasn't been done? So yeah, but yeah, that was absolutely the goal.
You mentioned Lord of the Rings. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the one Peter Jackson made. Peter Jackson. Again, puppeteers. The Sumatran rat monkey. A lot of people don't know that maybe 10 years before that, he made this gore fest. It might have been one of the gorest movies ever made. Omar, maybe you can help me. I forget what it was called. The Dead Alive or something like that.
Dead Alive.
And and the Sumatran. I've been to Sumatra. Sumatran rat monkey. Might be one of the scariest puppets ever in movies. But anyway, Jesse, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. I'm excited for people to see this movie, and this would be a perfect month for people to see it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun to talk to you guys. You all have like really interesting questions that I haven't been asked before. So I really appreciate that kind of insight. It's really wonderful.
Well, Jesse, before we let you go, can talk a little bit about where we can find the film to watch it, and where maybe you can drop your Twitter handle or your Instagram, Facebook, whatever, where we can find you on social media.
Yeah, thanks. So, the film is touring festivals, etc. right now. If people are interested in it, if they have, Shudder or Netflix or whatever, and if they want to be, twice blessed or twice cursed and actually send any of those platforms a message that says, like, hey, you guys should pick this up, that can go a real long way to helping us get their attention. And then in the meantime, if people want to follow us, they can find us just Googling Puppet Core at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, etc. Cody, are you saying goodbye? Come say goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye, Cody. Well, listen, Bye, Cody. Jesse, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. We really enjoyed the film. We look forward to hearing the response from all the viewers. It's definitely something different than your typical horror film. So going with an open mind, it's a lot of fun. Well done, my friend. And until next time, keep it scary.
Okay, thank you much. Sorry for